Hello, my name is Linda Haynes. I'm here with My Story. It's a project of the Sierra 2 Senior Center here in Sacramento, California. Today is February 22nd, 2016, and we're here with Frank Cook. Frank is going to be sharing his experiences and memories of the transformation of Sierra School into Sierra 2, the Arts and Community Center here in Sacramento. Frank, we're so grateful that you're here to tell your stories today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Could you start by telling us why you got involved in the transformation of Sierra School to the Sierra 2 Center?
Yes, I can. What happened is that I got married to a woman that had 3 children in the neighborhood, and I became their surrogate father. And they, 2 of them went to school here, and it was really quite wonderful because, of course, we went to the plays and all the things that the children did, and it was quite a nice experience.
And then you also had just finished a master's degree in community organization,
Yes,
I understand.
Yes, I got my master's degree in what they called service to community organization. The other one was service to individuals and groups, and I really didn't care for that. I really wanted to be active in the community. And so what happened was it just so happened that this thing started happening at that time. And so it was a perfect setup for me to demonstrate how one does that kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it tremendously. It was really a lot of work, but it was great.
And when you say this started happening, you're talking about the Field Act, which closed Sierra
Yes, the
School?
Field Act took place, I believe it came into play about 75 or 76, I can't remember exactly. And that terminated the use of this facility for an elementary school. And so the place was left in, let's say, in shambles, and nothing was happening. And so one of the things that did happen, and this may be out of order, I don't know, but all the windows were broken in the back of the building there. And so all of this stuff was all over the place. And so we took a little project, and I'm not sure if we were actually in place yet as an organization, or that was one of the starters of it. But we got about 20 or 30 people together with 55 gallon drums, and we filled, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them up with broken window glass. And that was the start of the process that went on.
You told me that the glass cleanup project led to the formation of the Sierra School Neighborhood Association in April of 1979. What happened next?
The building right behind us was a cafeteria, as you probably all know. And what happened was it was falling apart as well, but it had a good roof. And contrary to some of the opinions of other people. And so myself and one other person stood on the side of the building on our ladders, and we started painting. And within the next 4 or 5 hours, we had 20, 25 people working. And we never asked them to, they just came and started because the word got out that we were doing this wonderful project. Of course, we didn't know how wonderful it was going to be at that point, but that's how it got started. And then, of course, what happened was Dennis Renault and Doug DeVries and myself. Doug and I were neighbors, and I'd known Dennis for a long time. And we were sort of the starting machine that started putting the organization together. Mine, of course, being from the point of view of a master's degree in social work in the field of community organization, which is what this is a perfect package for. And so I got to organize and make good things happen and be very valuable to all the hundreds of people that helped to make this happen.
In November of 1980, Sierra School Neighborhood Association, or SSNA, changed to Sierra Curtis Neighborhood Association, SCNA, which it still is. Could you tell us about that change?
Yes, it started out as a sort of just getting a name of something to have on board, and eventually what it came to be was a boundary line at Donner Way all the way to the freeway and back to Freeport Boulevard. And that did not work out very well because, of course, much of the juice and the political power was on the other side, and it was a logical place for that to take place because the boundaries are actually logical. And the neighborhood association needed to change that. I was the person advocating that position, and Dennis was the person who was not advocating that. And so we had it out for a couple of weeks, and we weren't talking to each other and all that sort of thing. And then he caved in, and it was wonderful, and everything worked great from that point forward. And so we had then doubled the number of people, and we also doubled substantial influence with other people, and that was good.
So tell us more about your role as a community organizer in this process.
The process of becoming a community organizer is to take on a lot of issues and meld them into a position of success, and by utilizing the powers that be. For example, you could do it and have a green light or light crossing the street. You could do that. That's something everybody could agree to. When you have something like this, everybody has a different view. Everybody knows the answer, so to speak. So what you have to do is take that powerful force and move it to a place where it does the most good. And that's what community organizing is about. So what I did is I just jumped in with both feet because it was my thesis in many ways. And so over a period of several months and years, actually, I was able to be involved with all kinds of different pieces of this project and see wonderful things that people can do when they want to.
I understand that the city provided funding to help repair the building.
Yeah, it was provided by a grant from the federal government to the city of Sacramento and the county of Sacramento. The only part of that that was important to us was the city of Sacramento. And we were able to obtain a couple $100,000 worth of startup money to make this into a community center, which was of course being snickered about among many people about that. Because they didn't believe in it, they didn't think that it could be done. And there were many people who laughed at it and didn't think it was worthwhile. And but we had some very shrewd operators, and one of the things we did was make sure that we didn't spend the $200,000 on just whatever came up, but to get everybody to participate and use their labor to make things happen. And that worked out beautifully.
You told me the first association meetings were held in the cafeteria, and that after that other buildings began to be leased out. Could you tell us how that process worked and how you made that happen?
Well, we had a relationship with a person who was taking care of my child, and it was called the Busy Bee Daycare Center. And the person that was there happened to be a young lady who was very ambitious, and I talked to her a number of times. And when this came up, I said, well, you know, you want to start something, don't you? She said, oh yeah, I really do. I said, well, I got a space over here that you might be able to get. Why don't we go over there and take a look at it? And so we did, and she was out of her mind as soon as she saw that, because there wasn't a lot of work to do on that particular part of the building. And that is a gift. You know, it was actually the only portion of the building that wasn't associated with the Field Act, because it was built afterwards. And so very quickly, you know, she jumped on it and I jumped on it with her, and we were able to front some money, but not a heck of a lot. She had to do a lot of this work herself, which was the model that set everything up. And it was beautiful, and then that gave you hope, you see, that you could do this. And that one got done, and then another one got done, and then another one got done, and then, you know, they just kept right on going until they were full.
And so you charged low rent and made them do the work.
Yes.
You want to talk more about that?
Yes. Well, that's the way you get things done. If you're a neighborhood association of some kind, you're going to have a very minimum budget, and you don't have any way of making that work for you. But if you have a facility full of neighborhood organizations that want to make money, they can make a lot more money when they're together. So that was sort of the thinking that went on. Well, we get these people here, we have a lot of cultural activity, which creates more cultural activity, and good things happen, and then you can raise the prices as you go. And that's exactly what happened. And there were a few of these that weren't actually what you would call neighborhood associations. There were more associations with various kinds of activities that people would get into. But most of it was actually community-oriented stuff.
I understand there were some issues about the structure of the roof at one point?
This facility was shut down due to the Field Act, as we already talked about, and that the building was non-functional. And of course, the building was functional except for children. The roof was leaking, there's no question about that. But they kept telling me there was lots of termite damage and a number of other things, but I happened to be in a business where I had access to very skilled and knowledgeable people who had generations of work that they'd done in the field of dry rot, etc. And so I sneaked him in, and I went up with him, and nobody else knew we were in the building up there on top. And we had all our big flashlights and everything out, and we had what they call termite hammers. The wood was so powerful and so strong. See, it had been there for so long, it turned almost into rock. So there was nothing wrong with it. There was no termite damage, because there was very little wood except within the framework up here. There's no wall wood. You know, that's all built out of material that's sort of a brick. And so when that happened, I just kept my mouth shut and waited for them to tell us how horrible it was. And I said, well, let's go down there and meet, you know, we'll see what happens. And so we got the ladders, and we got 35 guys, no, 25 guys up in there, you know, and they're all, yeah. And I said, well, where's this damage at, you know? And I had my guy with me, right? And I said, well, I don't know, you know. And I said, well, this is Bob Moore, you know, and he's from Orchard Supply Company, and he did an inspection last week, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Quiet, it got real quiet. So that was the end of that story. And then, of course, we had to figure out a way to get a roof. And that was the only thing we spent fast, and we spent $15,000 to get that roof done. Because that was, of course, nobody could move in otherwise. As I told you before, in some of those situations that, you know, I walk in that place and it was 12 inches of water on the ground, I mean on the floor. You know, and this place is just being emasculated by this incredible waste of a wonderful resource. And so that's how I sold the package, and I shut up the bad people, you know. And they weren't bad people, they were just, they didn't care, you know. And so now they began to care because they had a facility. By no means was that the only thing that was needed, because we had a lot of work to do yet at that point.
Could you tell us how the school auditorium was transformed into the 24th Street Theater?
Yes, I believe that, let's see, there was 2 or 3 guys that had engineering background and carpenter background and that sort of thing. And everybody seemed to want to do something like this. And so we had to figure out a way to get some wood, you know, to make this thing happen and how it should be done. The engineer put together the plans and stuff like that. And I think our local guy that's a carpenter did a lot of work on that too.
John Brush?
Yeah, John Brush, and his wife as well, I think. So they did a tremendous amount of work on that. And what really went down was that we found out about Burnett Miller. And so I picked up the phone and called him. You know, I says, hey, you can help us with some wood for your old alma mater? He came through like you wouldn't believe. I mean, just tons of great, really fine wood. And Jerry and John were sort of the leaders of that, and we, you know, as usual, everybody showed up and everybody did what they could do. There is one wonderful story with that, and that at the same time that was going on, we were trying to figure out what to do about chairs. And the old Lincoln School downtown had been condemned and was being torn down so they could build the PERS system there. We went down there and took a look, and there was just all these really great chairs sitting there in the auditorium that they had. And then down that kind of angle, you know, that we were looking for. And so we just got a bunch of trucks and a bunch of people, and we drove in down there and took it apart and brought it back up here, and we had all the chairs for the theater. Now those eventually were, you know, those are old tables and our old chairs, and so eventually they put in new ones with little fancy seats.
Over the years, there were many community activities that raised funds to support Sierra 2. Could you tell us about those?
Many of those were varying kinds of situations. Some of them were donations of money from businesses and stuff like that. No really big ones, but some for, you know, 500, 1,000 here and there. But the thing that we were able to do is to put on community-oriented entertainment situations. And like you don't think of some things being like a little, what do I want to call it? Suppose a fair, it's sort of local fair, and what you did is you needed to have some way of getting people there. You can't just send it out in the mail because it's not going to do anything. And so Dennis and I got in the car, we had a loudspeaker, and he'd do it for a while, and I'd do it for a while. We went up and down every single street in Curtis Park, in fact, numerous times on a couple of occasions. And everybody would come out, and they'd start, what's this person doing? Yeah, there, yeah, well, fair, everybody have a fair, it's a wonderful fair, the first fair, da-da-da-da-da, right? And all these people start coming out, and then you start talking to them, and then, it just goes on and on like that, and then pretty soon it was jam-packed. And I think we raised like $10,000 the first time we did it. And I think we did it 3 times as a fair, and then after that there were other functions, many of which you all just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And those were great projects as well. Some of them were not as big money kind of deals as humor deals, and the pumpkin thing was not a big money maker. But it was really fun because everybody came down to see it. And it was
So tell us more, for people who don't know about the pumpkin toss, tell us about the pumpkin toss.
There's teams of people that get together and they create a mechanism that will throw a pumpkin, okay? And some of them never got off the ground. Some of them were there and they just fell over, right? And some of them were monsters and they'd go way out there, right? Which was the downfall of that particular package later on. And so these people came in, I think there was maybe 15 or 20 machines, the first one, and then eventually I think it got up to about 30 or 40. And those were, it was really funny, and it was charming as it could possibly be. But of course, one went over the fence, right? And so when the pumpkin went over the fence, it didn't hit anybody, but everybody went, uh-oh.
We had flea markets too, right?
Yes, the flea markets were very cool. And I'm not sure exactly when those started, but they were very productive because they charged per unit, right? And so, I don't know, it seems to me we were charging like $30 to $50 to have one of these little places, and you could have your little fleas and whatever you wanted to have in there, and sell stuff, and it's a really, sort of like a giant garage sale in a way.
A big one was the Pickle Family Circus.
Oh, the Pickle Family Circus, man, was that a joy. When that happened, first people were really against it, and I said, no, this is great.
Why were they against it?
Well, who knows? People were against this. People were against this that lived in the neighborhood. They were against it. Not very many. Anyway, so what happened was we got that off the ground. It's basically just a wide open space out there, and they just bring the whole thing in, and everybody brings a blanket, and we sit down out there, and it's very, entertaining little circus does its thing, and it's really quite fun. And we raised more than $10,000, but I trapped $10,000 out of that, and waited for the children's play area because I knew that was going to be important to maintain the interest in the area, because it's not going to, the open area out there hasn't got anything to do other than from time to time a little soccer. In those days, no soccer, little league activity. So that was it.
So you're kind of then leading into the next part of where the playground was built. Tell us about the playground.
Yeah, the playground was great fun. We did all the work ourselves, and we had the engineer once again, and he drew the drawings and did all the necessary stuff. Before that, however, there was a need for a sort of a visual of what it's going to look like. And so I tried to think of something to do, and I came up with the idea of contacting the National Guard Combat Engineering Group. And I got I guess he was a captain, on the phone. I told him the story, and he says, well, when do you guys want us to be there? And I told him, and so they showed up with their heavy equipment, and we had a drawing already done of where the lines to cut and open and make it into a spot, and that was under the old oak tree. And the deep stuff was 30 or 40 feet further out, and then down deep so that it could drain off into the facilities in the street, under the street. And so that, that took place, and then once you could visualize it, then you could dream it. And then we raised more money, and then we got more things happening, and we had a really good connection with the Tykert Association, and that is that they have what they call trailings after each truck. And so they would bring their trailings by, and there might be a couple of yards, there might be a half a yard,
So
might be
that's
3
cement
yards.
or concrete or?
Yeah, concrete.
Uh-huh.
And so that was going along quite well, you know, a little bit at a time, we were kind of moving through it. And then all of a sudden, the word got out that Tykert was going on strike, and that they were gonna be able to deliver, I don't know, 70 or 80 or 100 yards of concrete. And of course, we went into our high overdrive, and we pulled trucks in at night, cars in at night, and started their engines up and shot the engines onto that, and then started putting it together. And we actually had to do that twice, because when it happened, we had to pull in the night before and set up the whole structure to hold that together, so that you knew where to put the concrete, right? And so it was 2 badass nights, and but we did it, and it was just amazing. Everybody laughed so hard about it. And the next day, it was all, you know, here these trucks just come rolling in, and here we are straping that stuff down, and it was funny. In fact, the funny little picture of me with no shirt on, that was that day. And I was just ass broken. I was tired. I was really tired.
It's a great picture, though.
Yeah, that's a great picture, and it was a great time. That shows you what the neighborhood can do, see. The 3rd playground is out there right now. Not the actual structure is exactly the same as it was, except for the equipment. And in each case, there was a different reason why they had to do that. One was the first ones were, I believe, they were wooden, primarily wooden. And they had a toxic material in them to keep them from rotting out, right? And somehow, somewhere in the world, a child died of that, right? I don't know where it was, and I never heard about why it happened that way, but that's what they said anyway. And so then they had to take that one down and put another one up. Anyway, after that, there was another one where they used a lot more plastic and that sort of thing, apparently, which is apparently better.
Okay.
And there was, of course, one more emotional thing, and then one of the 2 of the kids went to this school, one of whom was older, died of a, it was so sad, you know. He had been around here at the school, all the other kids, and his brother was a friend with my son, and that was a sad story.
To say they planted a tree in his
Yeah,
memory.
we planted a tree there
Yeah.
for
For
John.
his memory,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, and then another big project you did a lot of work on was getting the restaurant at 6
Yes.
started.
Yes. Well, I would say the first thing I would say is that our friend John Brush once again came to the rescue as a very skilled technical carpenter, and was able to make some really nice work inside for the doors and that sort of thing, and did a really great job. However, where my strength was in relation to all of the problems that you run into when you put something new together with the city. This is the city of Sacramento now, and their building department. And so I fought with the people underneath, and fought until I finally got into this the same room with the guy that ran that particular department. And I sat down and talked with him for maybe 20 minutes. And he came out, and then he made some concessions so we could get the thing done. And that took probably a couple of months to get that part of it done, but then we went like wildfire and got it opened up, and that was, and at the same time that was before that happened, I got on the Channel 6 board too, because I heard about this little idea they had about opening up a little shop, right, for coffee and stuff. And so I got in on that, and the whole thing built into more than just a coffee house, but also coffee houses weren't what they are now, by the way. But the food and all that sort of thing had to be transferred into that deal, and there wasn't any way out the back there, you know, so we had to make that little area for other places, other people to sit outside in the summertime. Anyway, all of that went well for a number of years. first, yeah, 6 people walked out after 2 years. And then the new people that came in were around for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. And then now there's still somebody there doing prep and all that kind of thing. That's his contract there. He has that facility for that.
For
So-
catering, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So that's the end of that story, the beginning and the end of that story.
As we wind up our conversation today, could you share any reflections or words of wisdom about your participation in this major project?
Well, it's probably the most fun I've ever had in adulthood, associated with something that could be done, but we didn't know if it could be done. And so as we moved along, it got more and more apparent that it was going to be done. And each time that that happened, it gave me more and more encouragement to do silly things, pump money into it that I shouldn't have probably, and done all kinds of things that I probably wouldn't have done under normal circumstances. But it was just so exciting and so much fun. And the people of this community, I mean, they are unbelievable. And I don't agree with them on many levels, I can tell you that right now. But boy, you talk about asking for help. They were there every single time. And that's just exactly what we need in our neighborhoods. Not people that are going to go hide and run away and all that kind of stuff. And so I believe that this is a special area, and we got real lucky to have something that could be creative for all of us, and when you think about the asset this is to the community, and all the cool little plays and all the nice little rooms and all the things that are happening from, programs to help people get sober, programs to help people become better people than they were before, on and on and on, artists and so forth and so on. What a wonderful place this is, and I'm just really grateful to have been a part of it. Amen.
Amen.